Good afternoon. We've moved from the morning to the afternoon, and I know everyone's had some coffee. Thank you all for coming. It's a pleasure to see you. I thought I would try to join some of the conversations that we've had and some of the topics this morning. We are all focused on the promise of the internet and what we can do with it. We've heard a lot of conversation today about what happens to the end user on their devices, fixed and mobile, and we've heard about the network at the other end. And I think what's been forgotten is that the internet actually isn't a network. The internet is an association, a cooperation of more than 10,000 networks around the world that come together to exchange data for these things to work, for the experiences that we're all interested in to happen. And it wasn't designed for real-time commerce. It wasn't designed for real-time entertainment. That's how we've twisted it and turned it to create the most powerful new economic opportunity, really, of the last 100 years, this idea of the information revolution. So what Akamai has spent its time doing is effectively creating an overlay on the internet to guarantee performance. Now, we won't have a technical discussion today. We're going to have a business discussion. But the point I'd like to make is that you can go from thinking about doing new businesses online, particularly entertainment, to making them happen because of some key developments over the last 5 years. I'll talk a little bit about those. Effectively, what Akamai does is sit in 72 countries on top of the internet to control air traffic, to control the flow of data packets so we can have rich media experiences. And we've been doing this for over a decade for leading brands across virtually every major category that's worked online. So we won't spend time today talking about software as a service, but that's a business that's moved online in high tech. Or the billions of dollars that's now done in real time as commerce, B2B and B2C, or the enterprise apps that have moved online. But they all are part of this ecosystem where internet media has taken off. And that's an area where we have a great deal of experience, and I wanted to share, was asked to share some of our experiences here working with a who's who of online brands for news, entertainment, information, broadband video. And we're going to spend time thinking about these new media opportunities in a connected world that come through this idea of a media cloud enabled by the internet. And we need to think about the business opportunities that come with them. New opportunities for rich advertising that's paying for these content experiences. The idea of entertainment online in a true three-screen world, whether people want to consume what you have on the big screen, on the PC screen, or on the mobile, or often all three, sometimes simultaneously. And ultimately, we're going to move to a world of every connected device, and we heard that speculation about billions of devices, even our cars, for example. So let's talk about actually what's happened behind the scenes over the last 10 years. And there's a lot of hype about internet video. And believe me, I like hype about internet video. On the other hand, we've gone from almost no consumption online to some pretty interesting parity today with TV. Not in terms of overall consumption. About 1% of video in the home is consumed on the internet. It's pretty trivial compared to the whole market. But what we've seen is the move from trying this out to a TV-like experience. So if you go back about 10 years ago, the biggest online events were very techy. They were things like Steve Jobs' keynotes at Apple Macworld, and you could do 10, 20, 35,000 simultaneous users. If you fast forward through a year, we're now doing TV-size events, and this is just a small progression, often major news stories in sports, to the point where last year on the World Cup, we're doing TV-size audiences online with TV-size resolution. So several million concurrent live users watching an HD signal with full interactivity over IP. And I mentioned that sort of 1% threshold, only 1% of video in the home now is over the internet, 99% coming the other way. For the World Cup in most geographies, it was 5x that. So even for something like an event as popular as the World Cup on free TV, in the UK, for example, where it was on free in every pub and in every home, 5x, 5% of the consumption was over the internet, and you had TV-size audiences over the internet. And that's only been possible for high-quality video over the last few years. So with better quality and more usage came monetization opportunities for TV quality video, meaning this picture size this large for short form. We got to the point where people could make money with this content, where the revenue exceeded the cost of putting this content on the internet. As we've improved the quality and people are doing things like watching whole movies and watching whole sporting events, we have a new problem. which is people are consuming a great deal more content. The bandwidth consumed is much higher per minute, so the cost has gone up, and at first the revenue hasn't. What we've seen through the adoption of some common standards, though, just in the last couple of years, is that the cost has fallen. So if you look at that model of, do I want to watch the movie through my subscription service on the internet or have the disc mailed to me, it is now significantly cheaper to deliver the entire movie over the internet than to pay the post office to deliver it. So what we've seen is increasing quality, the audience follows, and the cost is coming down. Now, one thing I want to remind us of is TV actually works really, really well. We've spent 50 years figuring out how you can walk in, turn it on, and it just works, and you get your 500 channels. So the internet does not need to do just that. In fact, if the internet just replicates that, we haven't moved anywhere. We haven't created anything new. What the internet offers is an enhanced experience through interactivity and choice and the ability to watch it in more places. And so what we've seen through the adoption now of open platforms and common standards is we can deliver the TV quality picture over the internet, this HD idea. But you can now, through things like adaptive bit rates, ensure that the streams don't stop. You can do things like, through an open standards player, do multiple camera angles for the same match. So suddenly, it's not TV, it's enhanced television. You can switch now as fast as changing your satellite or your cable from channel to channel or camera angle to camera angle. Clearly, if you clicked and had to wait for it to rebuffer for 30 seconds, you're not going to switch camera angles in the middle of a live event. But now you can do this online with performance that equals or is better to what you get on TV. Without any extra hardware in the home, just because of the player that you launch in your browser, you can get instant replay, what we would call TiVo or DVR. Effectively just mark where something was and go back and watch it again. So we've been running live games with the National Football League, for example, where every score is tagged. And you can go watch the scores or any play you want of your favorite team during the event. So it's not TV, it's enhanced TV done over the internet. And it all happens in real time and can be live. Then what's interesting is the monetization models come in. So we understand contextual advertising. So this is a sports page, probably a typical demographic. People just run a car ad, for example. Not very effective. But as you think about adding behavioral targeting to the idea of context, context is we'll show the same ad to everybody because we think we know who you are. With behavioral targeting, we'll know who you are, and you can add advertising with much higher value. So if someone is watching and they're actually a home buyer, we give them a mortgage ad. Or maybe they're a motorcycle enthusiast and they get an ad like this one. Or it's family-oriented and they need to get the ad for the van. Think about what you can do with video. In the States on baseball, there actually is no ad back there. It's a green screen. But everyone watching TV gets the same ad. Same thing watching cricket now in India with the tournament going on. But why not on the internet give you the targeted ad? That ad ought to change with enhanced television. So that each viewer sees the appropriate marketing message and adds this opportunity for monetization. So now I've made it all sound like it's all done and it's really, really simple. We're not quite there, and that's the truth. This is still, especially if you own content, way too complicated. So traditionally, you made the TV show, you made the movie, and then you distributed it. On the internet, we add a few things, like which format do you want it in? Well, who should know that? And what bit rate? So now all of a sudden we have acronyms up there. That gets really, really messy. And which devices? It's not just a TV, it's lots of different things. And then there are delivery networks. And I started by telling you the internet isn't a network. It's actually about 13,000 networks who have to agree. So even though I've said we can deliver TV quality and you can pay for it, there was all this complexity that exists in most cases today. One of the key things, and I hope takeaways for you, is this is about to change. We're going to work and create media clouds. You create a mezzanine copy, the original of what you do, and you will hand it to the sky. You will hand it to a cloud that will be smart enough to know what kind of device does the user have, what bandwidth do they have at that time, what's the form factor, what are the monetization rules, and importantly, what are the rights rules, and deliver it and give you data back. And so we're going to be in a world where the bandwidth is there, the devices are there, the monetization models are now emerging, and the cloud will take care of that complexity because if you're trying to be a content producer and distributor, you shouldn't worry about the extra complexity that engineers like to add. And then the last thing I'd like to do is just make a comment on mobile, because it's so, so critical, and this wave of mobile is coming faster than I think anyone believed. We're 1-2 years away from the majority of access to internet content is going to be on mobile devices. It's leapfrogging the traditional infrastructure, the wired internet that came first in places like North America and Western Europe. It's going to give people lots of new ways to access content, but it's not easy to do. These networks are struggling with the amount of data today, and it's coming like just a flood that people hadn't anticipated. So in our case, we're spending time building alliances with people like Ericsson to figure out how do you optimize and create new services in mobile networks. So my answer and the industry's answer to you about mobile over the next 5 years can be similar to the confidence I have when I talk to you about the wired internet today, that it will be simple, it will be fast, it will be inexpensive, and it will be verifiable for you. So we're very excited about the opportunity, having talked about the opportunity for media online now for over a decade. Today, we deliver 1 trillion requests online for our customers around the world. We now believe it is the time to get into this game, that you can find new businesses, and if you don't, you've missed the next great opportunity for digital media. Thank you very much. We even managed to get the chairs correct.
The future is here is the name of this panel discussion. We may not be riding flying cars or exploring Avatar's Pandora yet, but the way we consume media has clearly changed for good, and this trend is continuing. Investors have clocked onto this. Only last week, we saw $42 million invested in the creators of Angry Birds, the iPod game in which players catapult animated birds into hard hat-wearing pigs. Whatever next? 40 million more iPads are expected to be sold this year, while Facebook has 500 million active users who spend more than 700 billion minutes a month on the site. So what's next? On the panel, we have Jassem Al-Zaabi, the CEO of Yahsat, the Abu Dhabi-based broadband operator, and executive director of the ICT unit of Mubadala. We have John Miller, the chief digital officer at News Corp, and Rio Caraeff, the president and CEO of VEVO, the music video service, which has more than 60 million users in the US and Canada. And we also have Paul Sagan. So if I could start with Jassem. Jassem, what is driving broadband demand in your territories? Is it films? Is it social gaming?
I think that's a great question, and I think when you talk about territory, Middle East and Africa, we have seen Middle East and Africa outperform the world numbers. I mean, if you consider the numbers between 2010 to 2015, there is almost a annual growth rate in the fixed broadband around 9%, and that goes to 33% in mobile. But here in Middle East and Africa, we have seen 16% compared to 9%. In the fixed, and we have seen 48% growth, or at least projections, on the mobile side. Video is definitely a big part of it. By the end of 2010, 40% worldwide use was simply video, or video-related. It's the same case here. I think Saudi today qualifies as one of the top 3 or 4 users for YouTube, and that tells you how much video and video-related content is heavy here. So broadband here, I think if you take consumers, governments, enterprise, is pretty much, these activities are driving the broadband need. And when I say a need, it's not a want anymore. It's a definite need in this region to bring more efficiency.
Okay, so Paul, are current broad sufficient to suit our needs?
Current broadband is never sufficient because the slowest speed that people tolerate is the fastest one they got to use one time. And so we keep spoiling people by introducing faster and faster speeds, and that's then what they expect. The first cable modem service, first online, always on home, was just 15 years ago at about 256K. What we now see, though, and I think the important sort of line we've crossed, is that in almost every major geography in the world, the average speed to the home to people who subscribe is over 2 megabits a second. And at that sustained level, with the kind of technology I talked about earlier, you can deliver a TV experience. You can deliver a picture, and most people, if they're watching the tournament online and they can't tell it's not what they would think of as TV. And it will get better and better, but we've crossed that magic line.
So when are we going to see the super fast speeds that we see in South Korea or everywhere else?
I think over time we inevitably will, but you don't need to have that to challenge TV. And that's the line we're at today. That took 15 years to get to 1% of usage, and the doubling rate is now going to increase exponentially.
Okay. So John, we're currently seeing sort of one dominant player in each space. We have Google, we have Apple, we have Facebook. Yeah. Does anyone else have a chance?
Well, a couple of things about that, I guess. One is first that there's always new players. I mean, there seems to be cycles, and they probably go in sort of half decades, and then new players emerge, and they come sometimes from very surprising areas. So there will always be new players. But I do think the way that the technology industry tends is different than the media industry. In the media industry, you have a situation where Jim Cameron was up here and talking about Avatar. Avatar was the #1 film in the world in the summer of 2009. And at the same time, Walt Disney had a film called Alice in Wonderland. And so Avatar happened to do fantastically well at the box office, $2.8 billion. And Alice in Wonderland also did over $1 billion in the same exact time. So that's what I call the I'm okay, you're okay scenario. And that's how the media business can work. The tech business tends to be more platform-oriented, and platforms try to win, and there tends to be one great winner, and that they tend to prevail for a period of time, like Microsoft did with Windows and Google has done in search. And I call that the I'm okay, you're dead scenario. And that is how the tech business tends to work. So those change over time, but slowly. But it tends to be very large winners in the tech side.
Will Apple continue to dominate?
Yeah. In the areas that the smartphone and tablets, I think that for at least the next couple, maybe even longer number of years, I do think Android will do very well over an arc of time. But Apple, the products are so good and so well accepted by consumers, and the Android market is just getting going, as is the other competitors. So in all its forms. So I think Apple has a lead that will continue minimally for a few years.
So is the technology and content creators working closely enough, do you think?
Yeah, you know, it's better. It's better, you know, because as a content company, in the past you wouldn't deal with people like Apple or necessarily even Google and HP and all of the and Nokia and LG and so on. You actually they were just different worlds. Now, on any given day in Hollywood, for example, those people are going around to every studio in a line trying to get the content rights. So it has changed materially. But the two industries, I think, are still trying to learn from each other, as they have different cultures, as I was saying in the beginning, and they're still learning each other's cultures. In America, it's kind of the LA versus Silicon Valley world as it tends to play out, but it's real. There are cultural differences.
Well, the Daily is a great example of that, isn't it?
So what we've tried to do with the Daily, which is a new publication that we launched for tablets, so it's just for tablets. We did not make it for the web. We made it just for tablets because we wanted to kind of reinvent the experience. And we wanted to really combine media and technology, that is, get everything that the iPad could do, and we worked closely with Apple in that, and combine that with our sense of both journalism and very much to what Paul was saying, that this is, I think, the age of video and just multimedia, the all-media experience that you can have on the tablet. So we tried to put that all together in a new product, and we did work very closely with Apple, which was a new experience for them, and I assure you, a new experience for our journalists.
And how's that going in terms of numbers?
It's going well, and by the way, we have about 6 of them on the terrace out by reception. So please see the Daily if you have a chance, and please leave the iPads there. They're iPads 1, so you wouldn't be interested anyway. But it's going very well. We have hundreds of thousands of downloads, and and readership or time spent, this is a really interesting stat. So time spent on online news sites, at least in the United States, tends to be about 7 to 11 minutes. That's a pretty good average across all the different news sites in the United States at a visit. And we're averaging about 45 minutes on the daily. So people are spending a lot of time going through this thing. We will charge for it, but we haven't started that. It actually starts next week. So we have our beginning moment of truth next week when we start to ask people like Rio to get out their wallets. Actually, in this case, sorry, not get out their wallets. It's through the Apple system, so all you have to do is one click, and you're a subscriber.
And who's reading it?
I am.
Yeah, so we sold, I think I've sold a subscription here to Rio, but it does skew younger. One of the things we were trying to do, if you follow what's happening with news consumption around the world, it's aging. And young people, as a generalization, are not consuming news, at least in the ways that they used to. So we wanted to make a product that had broad appeal, and that means it has liveliness to it, is very graphic and is very pictorial, a lot of video, and all media in the same place. So it is skewing younger, much younger than newspapers.
And when does it come to new territories?
So we are doing this with Apple. Not everything we do is intimately tied into all of Apple's systems. So we want to do something that we could do with Apple, and we were the first in the world to launch with their subscription product. And so when they launch that product in other territories, we'll be able to offer the daily there. But that's an Apple question, though. I think Western Europe's up first, and not too long from now.
We're talking about this year?
Yes.
This year?
Yeah.
First half, or?
Yes.
Okay. And Rio, is it fair to say the internet has made consumers more demanding, expecting content tailored exactly to their needs on every device that they can possibly get their hands on?
Yeah, I think that's correct. I have a term I'm sure I took from somebody else. I call it the physics of the web, which is essentially the natural order of things and the way the current tends to go, the way the wind blows. And ultimately, it's enabled unlimited consumer choice and unparalleled access on any connected platform. The expectation is that if I'm connected on my television, on my computer, on my tablet, on my phone, then I should be able to get anything I want at any time. In fact, I demand it. And so I think successful media businesses on the internet have to understand which way the current is going, and they have to be architected to be compatible with those physics. You can make water run uphill, but it just requires a lot of energy and effort, and it doesn't come naturally. So if you understand which way the wind blows, I think you can go further, farther, and faster.
And how did you manage to work with social media and come to an agreement, which not many people have been able to do?
Well, I think that our business has been about, again, embracing consumer choice, and that allowing consumers to experience high-quality music programming and music videos anywhere and everywhere they want to. So including YouTube, including Facebook, including hundreds of artist websites, including AOL, Yahoo, Last.fm, including our own website. So it's really about choice, and that the artist should have choice, the fan, the consumer should have choice. And so what we've done was we've partnered with Google and partnered with YouTube to essentially build the VEVO business, which is about harnessing the global passion for music and channeling it into a new platform for brands and artists and fans to drive more revenue per view and per stream than ever before.
Is it working? Are you a profitable business yet? Or?
I think it's certainly working. I think that's our sense is it's working. The sense of our shareholders, the Abu Dhabi Media Company, which is one of our partners in creating the business and bringing VEVO to this part of the world. I think generally we feel it's working. Our metrics for engagement, our audience, our revenue, our number of advertisers are all significantly growing. So we're very happy with how things are so far.
So how's your potential expansion plans to other territories looking?
Yeah. So today we're just under 60 million video viewers per month in North America, and we're now bringing the company to many other countries. So we're planning to launch in the UK imminently, even in the next 1 to 2 months, and also shortly thereafter to bring VEVO to the Middle East, North Africa region to right here in partnership with Abu Dhabi Media, and then to bring it to other countries in Europe, Brazil, Australia in the second half of this year and beyond.
Okay. So are content creators doing enough to work with technology companies, Paul, do you think?
So I think they're still phobic about it, but everybody's gotten better. And I think John's comment is correct, that there's a lot more communication, but they still exist as different worlds with different sets of vocabulary and a different sense of what's fair. And we've heard that it's not just technology companies, but it's also the networks involved. There's definitely this sense that each side thinks the other is picking its pocket. And so there's a great deal of suspicion. We've heard network operators that we spent all this money and they make all the money. And the content providers think a few are making a lot of money and most are trying to find the models that work. And they think equally, no one would sell connectivity if there wasn't some reason to have it there. And we're way past people subscribing for voice. They're subscribing for data, and data means the sites people want to go to. So I think these various segments of the industry have to find a way to accommodate each other and understand that there will be different splits of the revenue, but it's simply not, I did all the work, spent the money, and you got rich. It's nowhere near that simple. And I think if we can get through that in some more positive ways, there will be a lot more innovation and investment on both sides to come.
Can I
And Joss, sorry.
can I add to that? Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I agree with what Paul said. I would say and add to it in this way, that I think technology companies love the technology and believe that they've built this beautiful system and platform that content or bits can flow through, and that the bits are fundamentally fungible. Any bits can go through, bits are bits. Obviously, content companies feel like they've created these unique experiences that can't be duplicated, like an avatar, and then how they get to the consumer is just how they get to the consumer. Bits are bits, they'll just get there some way. So you have very different starting points between the two industries, and as well as the cultural issues. But there's something else, which is, as we work closely with Apple, and we've really appreciate them in many ways, but if you think about what they're trying to do with their business, they're trying to keep content prices at a certain place, i.e., like $1 a song, let's say, and sell devices. So they're not making their money from the content, really. They're making their money from devices. So their impetus is to make money somewhere other than content, but to use content as a catalyst in part. But from our point of view, that may not be valuing the content as fully as we would like. So that's why there is tension in these relationships, and because there are different business models, and it is different than, say, cable and satellite operators who have traditionally made money by bundling content and then charging, above that, which is making money the way we make money, which is why that system has persisted. So there's a lot to be worked out, and it has to get worked out, because this is the way of the world now and into the future, that these industries have come together.
Do you think Apple will work with more content creators? I mean, do you think that's going to be a trend going forward? Or?
I think, so they worked closely with us in the Daily, which was a new experience, particularly for them. I think it was a good experience, so I think the answer would be yes, they will. One of the reasons they were supportive of us with the Daily is they felt it raised the bar, and that if it raised the bar, it would cause other people creating experiences to step up, and that was in their interest to have ever better experiences on their products. So I think they will, sure.
If I could move on actually to the content space and what's interesting to acquire within that, is social gaming something that News Corp would possibly look at?
Yeah, you have a couple of real core behaviors that are taking place. One is video consumption, and Paul talked about it, and I think I'll just echo that we're entering the age of video consumption. I think we're about to see exponential increases in video, especially as Paul can make us able to consume it. When you give it to people and get, they'll consume it. Another is music. So music has been an industry that's been trying to figure out its business model, but the actual consumption of music, it's still a fundamental core behavior, and it's never been higher. So people have tremendous passion around music. A third is gaming. And everywhere in the world, and very strongly in this region, you see a lot of, just a lot of usage of social gaming, other kinds of gaming too, but I think it is a phenomenon that's here to stay. And it also is interesting because you have a different business model for it. You have micropayments where people who play Farmville, if you're familiar with that game, actually spend real money to buy virtual food or whatever it may be for their pig. And if I've been around a while, but if you ask me if people would spend real money to do that, I would have said no. And the answer is most people don't, but enough do, that it's a real business. So when you have a couple 100 million people playing the game, if 5 million people are spending that money, then you have a real business. So social gaming has a business model. So it has people that really want to play it, and it has a business model. So it's going to persist and grow for a long time.
So would News Corp look at acquiring a company like Zynga, or?
They're a little expensive, that particular company at the present, for a lot of good reasons, though I might think they're a little high. But what we've done is we did acquire a smaller company. We're trying to build it up organically. So we've taken a different path rather than go into what we believe to be quite a heated acquisition market, but rather than do that, to go in and build up. We bought a company called Making Fun and created a games unit. So we're putting a toe and then a foot in the water, and we'll see how that goes. One of the things we like about it is we have interesting properties from the film and television world that if we get confidence around our ability in this area, we can bring in those top entertainment brands into them and maybe add fuel to the fire.
So I mean, would you perhaps look at combining MySpace with them? Obviously, I know you're reviewing your strategic options for MySpace.
We have a company called IGN that isn't as focused on as something like MySpace, but is actually the leading website in the United States about games, and it's a very healthy business. So that is one of the reasons that gives us, one of the assets that gives us confidence moving into the area, because we know we can begin to promote. What Zynga has now, because they have so many users of their products, is anything they roll out, they can automatically promote it to a universe of game players. And that gives them a tremendous advantage. We have nowhere near that scale, but we have a similar ability to promote, at least to get in out of the starting gate with our products.
So can you give us a little bit more information on your plans for MySpace at the moment?
So MySpace, we relaunched the product, we resized the business, and now we're in the process of figuring out strategically what to do. Do we get partners in it? Does it partner itself into another business, or is there an outright sale? So we're right now just really starting that in earnest.
Okay. Rio, can you give me some idea of the small apps creators? Are they a threat? Are they an asset to larger players?
Apps creators? I think there's a lot of innovation happening in that space right now. Basically, there's an opportunity for somebody to have an idea and to create a mobile-first experience. It used to be create on the web and then bring it to mobile. And now the experience on a lot of mobile platforms, tablets or smartphones, it can now be so good that it's possible to create essentially a mobile-only business, a mobile-first experience. And you don't have to go to the web first. You now have enough people, enough infrastructure, a high-quality experience, advertising economies, billing models, and you can now create essentially a social music application, a social gaming application, all inherently mobile. So I think that's an incredible opportunity for small developers, and I think that innovation is a good thing. It's good for the consumer, it's good for the marketplace. I don't view it as threatening to big companies. I view it as the natural part of the overall ecosystem.
And what about the valuations attached to some of them? They're pretty large. Say we saw the Angry Birds investment of $42 million. Do you think these are justified? And then on a larger scale, do you think some of the social media valuations are justified?
You can have debates about justification of valuations and whether they're justified or not. I generally prefer not to spend the majority of my time focusing on that. I think at the end of the day, there's not a whole lot I can do about it. So I do think, though, that the potential of these businesses is really only limited by our own imagination and our own sense of what's possible, which I think history shows, is never quite. We're always kind of underestimating, what the long-term potential is. So I do think that some of these valuations, while they seem, for a small quantity of companies, while they seem frothy and significant, may actually be undervalued in the long run.
Really?
I think Facebook is well, some people would say is valued quite highly. I think considering the amount of time people spend and the amount of unlimited potential to impact almost every other business on the planet, I think that is probably undervalued.
What about the rest of the panel's view on valuations? Jassem, what do you think in terms of Facebook's valuation?
To be honest with you, I mean, my colleagues here probably they have the nicest part of the game here. Although they worry about content and they worry about apps and the creation and the devices. We worry about the infrastructure side of it when it comes to broadband, so probably I wouldn't be able to comment much on the valuations of Facebook's. Although I believe that for the last probably 2 years, the valuations have been more realistic, and I agree with you that Facebook now is not only becoming a social media, it's becoming, for some, they're thinking this is the next payment authentication database we'll have in the web, probably the largest so far. But going back to what we do, I guess infrastructure is the first step in the value chain. And if you didn't have the right infrastructure, you wouldn't be able to talk about the content, the apps, the creation, the devices. Sure. And I think this is where it has matured in places like Europe and the US and parts of Asia. And I think, and we are very happy to see in this region where the infrastructure now is at least ICT readiness index, put this region in very good place. When I say the region, I mean number of countries in this region. And I think this is what will make this region catch up when it comes to content usage and devices and content creation. In our side, we focus on that either through telecom companies on the fixed and mobile side, or through satellite, where we intend to launch our first hybrid satellite system by the end of this month, 30th of March. And by that, we'll be able to provide services in more than 85 countries in this region. And by the end of this year, we'll be able to provide broadband service through satellite in prices where only available to terrestrial residents. I'm talking $35 to $40 per month.
And what sort of speeds are we talking about here?
That's a very good question. If you're talking about areas where broadband is already available, I agree with Paul. Anything below 2 MB is not attractive anymore. I mean, today, if you take the US and the developed markets, only 40%, actually the world, only 40% uses less than 2 megabits. So we're targeting the 2 plus minus in these areas, but when it comes to areas where either broadband does not exist or it exists but through other more expensive applications or devices like VSATs, we are talking about 1 MB, 512 to 1 MB. So it's bringing change and at least opening the door for these communities to have access to broadband. And once you have that, the content creation, content usage, the devices will simply flow, and I agree with you. It's the flow will be much easier and smooth once the infrastructure is there.
So as a technology investor as well, what excites you? What's interesting at the moment?
So if you talk about satellite, the unlimited opportunities we have with the industry going to use for the use of Ka band now. We have seen it started in the US, now it's started in Middle East and Africa. The multi-Ka spot beam technology allows us to sell the broadband at very low prices and compete in with terrestrial operators. So in satellite, that excites us the most, and we'll be providing that service next year in 26 countries. When it comes to telecom, I think everybody agrees, mobile is the next broadband mean, and we're talking now about LTE, where downstreams of 300 MB, at least theoretically, are going to be achievable with the uplink of 85. So these technologies excite us the most, and we believe providing these technologies will enable clients of tap into the content.
Great. I think we're going to have to wrap up now, but thank you very much, everybody. Thanks.